All the Juggalos in recovery.
Hello, everybody. My name is Frank. I will be running the meeting tonight. Juggalos in Recovery is about the community in recovery. There is no judging here. Everyone is unique, and so is their recovery. Our topic tonight is going to be rolled off of the gym list. Please feel free to talk about your experience. This meeting is about an hour long. For any newcomers, we appreciate the strength and humility you bring to the meeting, and we are happy you are here. Now let's roll some dice. Miss Stacy has picked which dice I'm rolling with today. So first off, our D6 category will be number 6, back to emotional health. Seems to be rolling a lot lately. Oh no, what that roll on? 29. Ooh, changes. And just in case, step 9. Ooh, that actually is pretty cool. So changes in emotional health, and if you want to add some flair to it, we forgive ourselves as long as we try to fix our mistakes without causing any more drama. And that's going to be an interesting topic. So let's see. First off, when you're dealing with changes, let me talk for myself and not everybody else. When I deal with changes over the last 9 years since I've been sober, when I first got sober, I could not stand changes. Changes bothered me. Changes made me worry and stress, and it was all because I didn't have control over it. Now, changes with emotional health tied to it, when you're dealing with personal growth, which is basically what sobriety is in my book, you're going to have to at some point focus on your emotional health, your emotional well-being. And there's going to be a lot of changes. One of the first things I dealt with when I first got sober was the overwhelming flood of emotions that came in within like the first 6 months of sobriety. And I had to learn to deal with, and I had to reach out for help. I had to learn to deal with all of these emotions. I had to find ways to cope in healthy manners. I had ways to, I had to talk to people I hadn't talked to in years to try to figure out how to deal with emotions. I was on the phone with my grandmother every other day when I was going through that change. And that's all it is when you're dealing with all these emotions that when I was dealing with all these emotions that I was hiding from for my whole childhood and growing up and drinking and all that stuff, all it is a big change that caused me to have to focus on how to deal with things in a healthy manner. Now to tie step 9 into it, we forgive ourselves as long as we try to fix our mistakes without causing any more harm. That is one of the biggest changes on a personal level I had to deal with in sobriety and in life was how to forgive myself. That was hard to do because I was not willing to give up the pain I was causing myself because it was comforting. And when you hear it and when you say that out loud, it's kind of messed up, but it's the reality of what I was programmed to believe growing up. But I had to forgive myself, and as I was trying to make amends to everybody that I hurt over the years, I had to do it in a way that didn't hurt them, that didn't cause drama, that didn't cause stress, that didn't cause worry or anything like that. Those were all changes other people were going to have to face. So with that, there's many ways you can go with changes, emotion. So the big category is emotional health, the subcategory is changes, and the flare is step 9, having to forgive ourselves as we make amends to fix our mistakes without causing any more drama. So if anyone would like to speak on that, whether you're an addict or not, it doesn't matter. We all deal with this. Yeah, you. If someone does not talk, I am going to start rambling.
Somebody can't handle quietness, stillness,
No,
peacefulness, patience.
not in a no, not patience. What's that?
So yeah, emotional health, man. Super. I'm Brian. I'm a grateful recovered addict and alcoholic, and a proud member of Juggalos in Recovery. Um, so yeah, man. Emotional health, that is a big important part of my recovery, because if I'm not emotionally well, for myself, I'm not good for anybody else, basically, right? And changes, like you were talking about, you're going through the changes and having all these emotions and feelings come back and learning how to cope and deal with them, right? Like that was me too. I think that's normal for any addict or alcoholic, especially me. Like when you first get sober and you spend a lifetime numbing all these emotions and these feelings, they all come rushing back sometimes sooner than later. And mine was extremely quick, to where I was a roller coaster of emotions and didn't know what to do. So I was constantly on the phone with somebody in my network, learning how to cope and deal with these things that normal people are used to dealing with most of their lives, that I didn't know how to handle. And the hardest part was, learning how to change and accepting and loving myself and growing to where I could address those past situations with people without causing harm on them, right? So I can let go of those deep-rooted resentments or issues or anything that I had bottled up in me without hurting them in the process. And most of my amends came simply to, hey man, I was chaotic. I'm sorry you knew me when you did. If there's any harm I did in the time that I knew you, if there's anything I can do to make it better, or make it right, would you let me know? As simple as that, because they know what happened. I know what happened. There's no point of bringing in a giant situation to make myself feel better. You know what I mean? But just know that I'm doing this and I'm truly sorry for whatever the case may be, and leave the ball in their court, right? Because that's part of what you were talking about, and that's the hardest part, is to grow to the point where you can do that, because I remember like a year sober wanting to make amends to my dad, but it was out of spite. Let's do it right now. Let me tell you about yourself, basically. He's like, now's not the time. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. You know?
Yeah,
Um, and I don't think anybody's perfect, man. That's life, man. It's growth and change. Things are ever changing. And if you're growing, everything's always going to change. So it's all about learning to adapt while balancing your emotional health. You know what I'm saying? Because like emotional mental health, like is the key thing. If you don't have that in your recovery, like, you're bound to backslide eventually. There's only so long you can get by with just doing what worked yesterday and a year ago, and not doing anything to grow or enhance.
I like that you brought that up because in my time in sobriety, I dealt with, as we all do, a lot of changes. But one thing I was not prepared for was how many changes I was going through. And there was many points, not just one. There was many, many times that I was going through and dealing with the same things or doing the same thing over and over again because it's what worked last time. And I had changed so much that I ended up digging myself a rut. And I was sitting in that rut because I was complacent to the point of not paying attention to how I was being as a human being. I had made so much growth. I had literally left myself in the past. Like, I don't know how that's possible, but that's what happened. Like, I was dealing with things as Frank 6 months ago, but not as Frank now. And that, like, putting it in that aspect, like, so many times I've been complacent. Even since I've been with Stacy, there's been times where I know I needed a meeting, or she knew I needed a meeting because it's just what needed to happen, and I got complacent, and I got my ego and my pride to tell me, no, you can handle this, you can do this all by yourself. And too many times it's happened to where I couldn't do it by myself. I needed my community around me to help me. But also, like, there's things, even in a relationship, things change minute by minute. Like, you've got to be able to go through those changes and stay mentally and emotionally well so you can be there for the other person. And so they can be there for you, or you two can work together and accomplish the same goal. Um, there's so many things, like, changes is such a broad topic. The changes you go through, the changes the world goes through, the changes your family, your friends go through after you get sober and how they treat you, um, changes in your work and and there's just so many ways to go with it. But I like the fact that if I start focusing on, I like this spin on it, using changes on your emotional health. If you take a minute and focus on the changes that you have gone through and the progress you have made. All progress is change on a constant basis. If you take a minute and focus on the progress that you've made since you've been sober or since you've quit your addiction, you have time to be grateful for what you personally have accomplished, which should in turn awaken more understanding of the type of person you are today, which will allow you to further that progress. Because the more you understand about you, the better you can deal with yourself.
I missed part of what you were saying. I had somebody calling in.
Oh, you're fine.
But yeah. So that's the thing. Like, when I got sober, and I don't think it matters if addict or not. Like, emotional health, mental health, growth. Like, I didn't know who I was when I got sober. I didn't know anything about my emotional or mental health. But when I started doing things like reflecting on the day, or praying, or allotting myself time for meditation or music therapy or whatever it may be, right? I could notice the difference in how I felt on a day-to-day basis emotionally, right? And I notice when I'm out of whack that I've been slacking in one of those areas of things that I usually do. And learning who I was, or who I thought I was. And what you were saying, like you outgrew yourself and didn't even know that what you thought was you, was way in the rear view, and everybody sees you differently than what you thought you were. Like, I get that because I totally went through that same process. Like, and I still, some days, like, I'm coming up on 4 years of sobriety. Like, do you not know who I was 5 years ago? Like, how could you love me? How could you accept me? How could you trust me? Like, because sometimes we still think of ourselves in those old past lights, no matter how far we come, like, and I try to just use it as a tool to help others. But, it still can be baffling to your own mind when you look in the rear view and go, wow, this is insane. Like how far I've come. And this group of people around me and all these people, like, this is what I always wanted, but didn't know I wanted it because I was so hard on myself and so caught up in my mental health and emotional health and my drug addiction and everything. You know what I mean? That I couldn't accept it because I didn't even love myself. You know what I mean? And that is crazy.
That's something that a lot of us deal with too, is not knowing how to love ourselves. That's a very big change that we have to deal with. Because during addiction, oh, I was so good at putting myself down. It was something that I should not have been good at, but I was taught from a very young age that I wasn't good enough. So I treated myself that way. And to undo those years and years of programming, to learn to accept myself and to not only accept but to appreciate myself for the things I do, who I am, the things that make me me. I had to do it in very, very little steps. I could not do it by all at once because it was just too much for me. I had to do it little by little because it was just different. It felt wrong almost to do it in the beginning. Like, it felt so weird to be like, you know what? I like who I am today. Like, for me now, it's just, you know, I still have my days where I don't care for, my looks or something. I'm having a bad day. But me as a human being, I feel like I'm a pretty decent human being. Even when I have to put someone in their place or correct someone, or I tend to get pissed off and yell and raise my voice, and um, there's sides of me that I don't care for that come out every once in a while. But the reality of it is, I'm a human being. I am not perfect, and the far a few time the few times that those not so great sides of me come out, I'm okay with, because I'm not going to hold myself to a standard of perfection that I can't hold. As long as I'm not hurting anybody physically, mentally, or emotionally, and I'm able to be a decent human being to that person afterwards, I'll make my amends, I'll do what I can, and I'll move on with my life, because I'm not going to let something or someone stop me from having that peace and serenity that I need to live a happy, well-rounded life.
Yeah, and you were talking about as the progress, like, and how like you didn't feel right at first. Like mine started with, like, I was big into the negative self-talk, like you were talking about. Like, I'm a piece of shit, I'm worthless, I won't amount to anything, after hearing those kind of things, you know what I mean? Like, and trying to change my mindset, which we should talk about often. So positive talk, self-talk, and positive mindset. Like, no, I am worthy, I am enough, I do deserve better in life. Like I am not that person I was. Like I am better than what I thought or people thought, like the possibilities, looking at things with a silver lining or in a positive light is a small step to a greater path, but all it takes is just trying to rewire the way you think and talk about yourself, like it's never like I can't do something anymore. It's like I will try my best at whatever I'm trying to do. And it's not promising the world like I'm gonna conquer every little thing, like perfectionism, right? Because that's what alcoholics and addicts like us tend to do. We have the perfectionist trait. So it's not trying to be perfect, but just trying to put forth your best effort, you
So
know.
you're gonna have 4 years in about a week.
November 3rd,
Correct. So
2018.
it's a week and 2 days my time. So with
Yeah,
that,
I don't count days these times anymore.
well, in the last 4 years, what is the hardest change that you've had to deal with in your sobriety?
Emotionally, or
B- Change in general.
there's been a few of them. Learning to deal with losing people close to me, which made me have to learn personal boundaries with attachment, because I'm a firm believer that most people like me who suffer with alcohol and addiction in their personalities, that we're also codependent. So that part, or holding people to a higher standard than I should, because I should never put anybody on a pedestal. Because humans fail us. I failed myself. People, that's how that is. So that's one thing that was a big change that took a lot of time to learn that healthy boundary. I always thought I was a good dad, but the drugs and alcohols were always first. So learning to become a good dad, learning to become a good spouse, a good son, all these things that I wasn't before was a drastic change. Shit, just learning to be responsible and accountable, huge change. You know, I so easy to point the finger everywhere else but at yourself.
Yeah,
And the biggest change yet is was buying a house and taking on those rules that I just talked about.
yeah,
It's a lot of responsibility and it can be stressful at times, but it's so worth it.
yeah, I agree. I think there's been a lot of changes in the last 9 years. I think on a personal level, the biggest change that I pushed myself to go through was to find and learn to have the ability to understand things I haven't gone through. Because there's a lot of I used to hold myself on such a pedestal of being able to help everybody that it actually used to hurt people because I was giving them false information for whatever they were going through. And I got to the point to where I stopped myself from doing that and I allowed myself to just sit and listen, which is extremely hard for me. Well, it was extremely hard for me to do. It's not that hard to do anymore because I realize just how powerful it can be. But not only did I sit and listen, but I tried to understand. I tried to put myself in that person's shoes, which I came to understand that only gives me part of the picture of what they've gone through. But they're telling me from their point of view what was going on, what was happening, what was the biggest impacts in that situation to them. And that allowed me to give general advice to help hopefully steer them in the right direction. That was really hard for me to do because believe it or not, I loved hearing myself talk, even though I don't like having pointless conversations. But when I was an addict, I taught myself how to babble on to make myself look outwardly like the outgoing person so I would be more accepted. And I would do these wild and crazy things in my friend groups or my friend groups because I just wanted the attention because I wasn't accepting the attention in my life. And when it all boiled down, once I got sober and I started realizing all this, it was all because I just wanted to feel love and acceptance. When I was growing up, even young childhood, I was passed from house to house. Um, and whenever I did live in a house for a long period of time, I was the outcast. I was always treated differently. My brain always worked differently than others. It was never accepted. I liked things other people didn't like. Um, but it was it was a very hard change. And then I got into a relationship with my wife and our marriage, and I had to improve on that even more because it was really weird for me. Like in there in a regular friend setting, I was improved, but in a relationship setting, when I dealt with my now wife, I had regressed or I had never improved in that situation, that type of relationship. So when I first met my wife, I thought she was an addict. She wasn't. But that's 8 years, whatever it was when I first met her, 6 or 7 years I was sober. I reverted back to my very first year sober on how I dealt with her and her issues, when the reality was she wasn't anything like that. And it took me a lot of arguments, a lot of listening, a lot of trying to understand that people aren't me and they all have a different story. They all have a different background. They all do things differently. Um, and even though things could be construed as someone's an addict, they don't have to be an addict if they don't want to be. It's just a title, it's just a tag, it's a tagline. It's just something we deal with to all these things that we learned from our past, all these trauma situations put us into a path where we just don't know how to um, control ourselves. And now we've got to learn that. So I'm not an addict anymore. Dee's not an addict anymore. Lisa, I don't know much about you, but I'm assuming you're probably not an addict anymore because we've dealt with a lot of our issues. We had to learn
And
how to
this,
grow up.
and this is why I introduced myself as I am Bryant, and I am a grateful recovered, right? Because I suffer from
Hmm.
addiction personality disorder, if you want to get the technical term. I have
Hmm.
mental health problems, and how I deal with them is I tend to drink and drug to where I can't control it. Right. So I'm more than my addiction. It's funny you bring it up because I just like was explaining the Juggalos recovery and all this stuff with my sponsor the other day and got in this long conversation about how everybody's recovery is different. And I'm like, well, our whole thing is like, you're not banging dope, you're not smoking ice, whatever is going on in your life. Like you overcome those addictions. Like if you like you're from the other fellowship. It says if you can do the proper about face, my hat's off to you. If you can still have a fucking beer, my hat's off to you. If those things that were dragging you down mentally, emotionally, drug addiction wise are done, and you can be somewhat normal and do things that I can't do, good for you. I don't care. That's you. Me, I know how I am. I've had to learn that over the years. I just unfortunately one of those people that can't do anything that alters my state of mind because I don't know how to stop doing it once I start. Because it's the euphoric feeling of it that
Mhm.
I chase that I can never get after the first one.
And see, for me, that goes that's the same for me. I notice in my sobriety that even though I don't drink or drug or anything else anymore, the things that do give me that euphoria, that rush, whether it's the woodworking or the car, fixing something on a car, or writing the book, or running meetings, or no matter what, I always throw myself into it head first. And I get so caught up into it, I forget what life actually is. And I had to learn to moderate all that and put priorities for myself. Like I have to hold myself to those priorities because if I don't, I'm hurting the people around me.
That's the addictive personality disorder. It was said to me as people, some of my friends introduce themselves. I am so and so, and I am addicted to more. Doesn't matter what it is. We go full throttle because that is the personality disorder. Once we're into
Hmm.
something, it's all or nothing with it. Because, like you were saying, the feelings, like early recovery, like service work, all the fucking time. Let's fucking run it. Now I'm like, I can't really do that commitment. Like I want to inside, but I'm like, I have these priorities that if I do that, I'm not going to do those. Which I kind
Hmm.
of did I kind of did yesterday because I didn't get my work clothes ready. I didn't get my vitamins ready. I didn't do all that because I wanted to go do service work. And I put myself on the back burner to get that euphoric feeling of service work.
Well,
So I
that's
feel you
also
there.
probably because you didn't do the meeting Friday and you didn't get your fill all weekend. So you had to do
I did.
something to get that
That was
high
part of
going.
it. That was
Yeah.
part of it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely part
And
of it.
yeah. And see that's but here's the thing is you didn't hurt anybody. You might have caused a couple minutes in the morning to where you had a rush or something, but
I did. I did.
I
But
mean, but
it was a healthy way of doing
exactly,
things.
it's a
Yes.
healthy way of coping with it. And that's the thing, a lot of what the biggest change we deal with as addicts is that we need to learn how to cope in a healthy way where it doesn't hurt the people or yourself, the people around you or yourself. As long as it doesn't hurt anybody or anything, that means you're doing it in a healthy way, and that's okay. You can be quote unquote addicted to something as long as you learn to put your priorities, yourself, your family, your friends, your job, all that stuff that you need to live and be healthy on top of whatever you're doing. I tell you, when I'm at home, when I'm home from deployments, I have 4 months off to do whatever the heck I want. And in those 4 months, I am usually nonstop. I usually am doing yard work or working in the garage or working in the shop. I have so many hobbies and so many things I want to do between playing board games and doing things with friends and building stuff out of wood and trying to get better in that craft or fixing my old vehicles because I can't stand computerized vehicles um, or sooner or later rebuilding my classic car or whatever it is, playing with my son, hanging out with my wife, making sure she's still feeling like I love her. Um, there's so many responsibilities on my plate, but it's taken me 9 years and now 4 years with my wife to be kind of good at it. I still need to be reminded, hey Frank, you've been in the shop for like 12 hours now. It's time to come home and spend time with the family. I'm like, oh, I didn't know there was such thing as a clock. I'm sorry. Like, I literally lose focus in life because I get so focused on that one thing that I'm doing. I lose track of time. I forget to eat. I forget to sleep. I forget to take care of myself. myself, and that's not healthy. But if I've had to set reminders and alarms and still trying to find the perfect way to handle it all, but the reality of it is every day is going to be different. And some days it's okay to sit in my workshop for 12 hours, especially if there's nothing going on at home and I just spent whatever, if it's okay, it's okay. You just have to be able to be fluid in whatever you're doing. Lisa, I know you've been quiet this whole time. Do you have anything to add to this topic or you want to share? It's also okay if you don't want to say anything. I don't want to fill up the whole time with just me and Dee talking if you have something to share. Okay. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up. Uh, Dee, you did bring up something that I would like to touch on when it comes to changes, and it's a very hard thing to deal with, whether you're an addict or not. Um, and one of the biggest changes we will ever deal with is the loss of someone close to us. Um, a year before I got sober, I lost my mother. She was actually, her death is what led to my downward spiral, to my rock bottom, and got me to get sober. But I have recently lost my grandfather, who was a really big part of my life, and he passed away while I was overseas, and I had to fly home, deal with all that stuff, and then come back. Um, and then I didn't process those emotions until after I got home and my deployment was done. And there's still, I mean, even with my mother who's passed away over 10 years ago now, there's still days where I just want to call and hear, even though my grandfather would never talk on the phone. If anybody's watching or listening to this, whether it's now or later when it's on YouTube, just know that grief is a very deep and hard emotion to deal with. You do not have to be alone when you're processing your grief. There are people who care about you, and there are people who love you, who will help you through whatever you're dealing with. I could not have gotten through my grandfather's death alone. It is a very tough thing to have an attachment so strong that you could not prevent. And one of the worst things you could do is prevent yourself from having that strong attachment to anybody else, or a strong attachment similar to, because no one's going to have the same attachment. You cannot try to protect yourself by not allowing people close to you. That is unhealthy, and it will hurt you and your loved ones more than you will ever realize. I speak from experience, seeing people do it and going through it myself. For so long, I held so many people at a very safe distance because I did not want to deal with losing someone else, on top of having to deal with me getting hurt in the long run. Um, now, that was a very hard thing I had to learn to accept once I got sober as well, is that no matter what goes on, no matter who you lose, no matter who leaves your life, no matter no matter what happens in life, you will be able to get through it. If you're already sober or you're already with your addiction, no matter what you're about to go through or what you're currently going through is worse than what you've already been through. Because our lives are always worse when we're in active addiction because of how much pain we cause everybody else, how we treat everybody else and ourselves. You will very rarely find a healthy addict. And even if you do, they're not mentally and emotionally healthy. So you have to take care of yourself. You have to make sure you put your priorities straight and deal with whatever comes your way.
So yeah, you have a good point with that. When I was saying that, I meant in like the healthy aspect, right? Because you know the field I work in.
Mm-hmm.
I have residents, people relapse, people die. I have all this stuff going on. And I have a problem with getting attached to everybody because I see the potential in everybody and like everybody. It's the same thing when you're in the rooms at AA or whatever, a 12-step fellowship. You can't just think it's going to be forever with all these people when the true reality of addiction, alcoholism is half of us ain't going to make it
Mm-hmm. And that's
without
being generous.
following actions. Yeah. Yeah. So mine was learning a healthy way, surround one of my ones that are actually walking, talking, doing the things. And sometimes they'll still shock you years down the road
Mm-hmm.
and, and pass away or something happens and they're not there anymore. But I had to learn not to get attached to people on just meeting. You know what I mean? Like that was
Yeah.
my problem, being too
Yeah, I
involved.
dealt with that too.
And so it's learning to be healthy with it, enjoy the moment you have with people, love to your fullest, care about people, but learn not to be attached to every single person on the same level, you know?
I agree. There's two sayings, metaphors, whatever you want to call them, that I've learned throughout the years, and one of them is sometimes you are not the main character in the situation, and the other one is don't wait. My brain said don't. You don't need to remember that. So a lot of the times in my early sobriety or even in active addiction, I went through and I felt like I was supposed to be the center of attention because I felt like I was supposed to be the main character in the story. But the reality is, I'm not that important. I'm just another human being. I do not have to be the main character. The other thing is, do not try to treat everybody in your life as the main character because maybe sometimes you will be the main character or someone completely different. Maybe you're both of you are just background fill just to make the movie look good. You don't know what's going to happen. Appreciate every experience that comes your way. The other thing is you don't know whether a person is going to be in your life for a sentence, a season, or a chapter. So appreciate the moment. That's how I interpret that.
Agreed.
And I just want to point out if anybody's watching my wife cook, that was all garlic powder. And she only cooks with garlic and butter. Everything else is just additives. So, Chris, since you just joined, I have been talking a lot. The topic for tonight is emotional health, changes, and step 9, which I will read to you. Give me a second to pull it up. It's step 9 is we forgive ourselves as long as we try to fix our mistakes without causing any more drama. Basically, making amends to people and ourselves without hurting other people. So,
Okay.
cha- changes in emotional health, changes in life, being aware of the changes, being fluid, however you can spin the word changes. But we've also touched on changes in your mental and emotional health and all that stuff too.
Oh, I dig that. That's definitely something I wish I would have learned a little earlier on when I was working in my sobriety. Mostly just the ability to be in the background, not trying to be front and center all the time, because I was never truly available to everybody that was around me because I was still working on myself.
And that reminds me of a lot of what we like to talk about, the cup of life. We had a meeting on that at the gathering. You can't help others if your cup isn't full. If you are too spread thin, and that this is a huge thing I have to pay attention to, especially running juggles in recovery and being a husband and a father and a brother and a grandson and a leader at work and all these things, that all the hats that I have to wear. I have to make sure that I take care of myself, so my cup that I hold, my cup of life that I like to call, has something in it. So when someone does ask for help, I am capable of giving that person help. And there's been plenty of times when my cup was not full and it was completely empty, and I tried to help someone, and I probably did more damage than good. And it's a very hard thing to accept when you're a person like me who just wants to help everybody. Because, like Dee was saying, I see the best in everybody. I get attached very easily. I do whatever I can to make sure that the best that I see in you gets brought out. And it's taken me a long time, and I still have trouble with the fact that not everybody's going to make it. But I treat everybody like they're going to. I've just learned to not get so attached to it anymore. That was a
Yeah.
very hard thing to accept.
Oh, I mean, but between the four of us that are here on a consistent basis, we're all spread pretty thin. And when it comes to sobriety, especially when we hit that mental wall, when we're starting to really struggle, we have to be able to take that step back and let things happen as much as we want to get involved. We have to just make ourselves unavailable, because in the end we end up getting dragged down. The gathering this year was a pretty good example. We all had to tell each other to take a step back at least a handful of times daily, just because it was so much and we were so dedicated that it it was blind to us. So that's where the community really has to come in to help give you, the proper guidance and make them look at themselves a little differently.
Yeah, and that's a very good point to bring up, is when you're going through these changes, no matter what's going on, no matter what the changes are, you don't have to deal with it alone, because you'll have you either will have or you do have a community of people around you that care about you, that love you, that want the best for you, that have no ill intentions in your life towards you, that you can rely on to help you get through it, whether it's there as emotional and mental support, physical support, no matter what the case is. I don't know how many times, just the very first day I showed up to the gathering, Chris was like, drink some water. Frank, take a break. Take a break. Drink some water. Will you stop? Sit down, Frank. Have you eaten today? Like, it was unreal how many times I had to be, for lack of a better statement, put in my place because I refused to stop. And then a lot of the times, like, even at work, the last week has been crazy. Just airplanes breaking left and right. been going a mile a minute, and then all of a sudden, pilot breaks an airplane. I spend the last 6, 8 hours a shift, whatever, on my feet fixing it, take one break to put some food in my stomach, and I get everything done that I want to get done. The next day, I was dead. I had worked myself too hard for too long, and my every muscle in my body hurt, all my joints hurt. Last night I slept for 10 hours because I couldn't catch up on sleep. My body needed to heal, and the only way to heal it was to sleep. And putting yourself in that position is not healthy. And I did something that was unhealthy, but now, because I work with a very good group of people so far, that I'm able to take a step back and be like, okay, I don't have to just handle everything myself anymore. And that's a very hard realization to deal with when it comes to how my brain works. And that's moderation at a very interesting point in my life. Go ahead, D, and your damn hand being raised.
I did it just to bother you.
I know.
And so you wouldn't ramble forever. Let's be honest here. Listen,
Uh-huh.
I can say, I mean, Chris raises valid points. As much as Chris has going on with everything he does, as much as I have everything going on with everything I do, you, Frank, like, we still make stuff happen and find a balance and do what we have to. And like, we find our times to recharge and do everything that we have to do, you know? What is that, a pair?
Yes.
Oh, who did that?
That's
Chris
what.
probably.
Oh,
Um,
he does a pizza. I do a pear. That's what
oh,
happened
okay.
on Friday. That happened on Friday's meeting. So it's going to
I,
continue now. It's a thing.
I missed that one, so now I'll have to find one because I was busy preparing for this wedding. But as much responsibilities as all of us have in our personal lives, no matter what it is, we still seem to make a great group effort and teamwork and getting stuff done that normally we wouldn't have anybody to help us with. Like, you came through on the Friday meeting because I was decorating from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. No joke. I sent y'all some pictures of that, for the wedding. And my wife had the best wedding ever. She was so happy. She looked like a little gothic princess. She loved every minute of it. She's like, didn't she didn't want control of it. I pretty much did everything because she was just like, I don't really care. But then at the end of the day, she's like, I really did care though. And I was like, see, so I put in all the effort and you're happy. That's all that matters because this is the one and only time we're going to do this. So, like, having that group of people to lift the burden or to share the burden with makes life easier, and even at the gathering, like, we all did good there too. It was a group effort. Like, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. You mind sitting here? No, I got this shit. Go handle your business. I don't have nothing to do until this time. Like, stuff was popping off. Everybody was there to, show up and handle it. Like, it takes an army. Like, nobody gets sober. Like, yeah, you come in alone, but you don't stay in the program or stay in sobriety being alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as awkward
Mhm.
as it is to, like we were talking about earlier, to change and grow to where you love yourself and you can accept the love from other people is a hard thing, but it happens whether you fight it tooth and nail or not. If you're working on yourself and growth and change, that stuff comes, the network of people come. And it's awkward at first. Like, I couldn't accept kindness from anybody. I was like, what is your motive? What are you getting at? Nothing. They're just actually being decent human beings. What the fuck are those? Oh my God, I'm one of those sometimes now. Holy shit. It's weird, right? When you spend the whole life not being a decent person, even though you thought you were decent, but there was always a motive behind the action, right? I'm going to front you this 20 to get 40. I'm going to party with you today so I can use you for the next few weeks. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That kind of stuff, So when you're talking about relationships and just naturally caring about people, that's just that unconditional thing that we're supposed to do without the strings attached, right? But finding the balance of not getting attached so you don't get burnout on other people is hard to do, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have that group of people there with you. You know what I mean? because it's so easy to put the whole burden on yourself and not say, hey, I can't do this right now. And then you'll be surprised when you say, hey, I can't, how many people go, I will, you know, but nothing happens without open your mouth. The old saying, closed mouths don't get fed. If I choose to never open my mouth, then I'm just going to bottle it all up till I overflow and explode. Just like a Fago bottle.
And explosions are never good unless it's Fago.
We have seen our fair shares of explosions, especially doing what we do.
Oh boy. Yeah.
You look like you're relaxing today, Chris. You're in the lazy boy hanging out.
Oh yeah, I know.
What a
I'm in my,
surprise.
It's probably the
I'm
first time he's sat down all day.
yeah, I know. I literally just got back in from working on the arcade.
Where are you building this arcade?
I was just building another arcade out in my driveway.
Alrighty then. Well, any last minute shares? He's got the crown. Of course, his ego would pick the crown.
I'm not a degenerate no more. I treat myself like a king, okay? That's as we all should. We are all kings and queens in life if we get sober and treat ourselves right.
There you go. That's going to be a short on YouTube, just FYI. It's happening.
So
I'm gang.
Hey,
You should
there's
always
my
treat
son.
yourself like
Say
a
hi,
king.
Henry. No, he can't hear me.
no, Henry disappeared. Oh, there
Oh,
he is.
hi, Henry. All right, I'm going to end the meeting, guys. Thank you all for showing up. To end the meeting, I believe no matter how long the road, if we walk together, we will get there. Even though we will face some of the darkest evil ever seen, we will face it as a community and stand fearless in its path. Nothing will stop us. With the help of our family and community, we will overcome the persecution and tribulations that life may cast from time to time. To the ones who still suffer and haven't found the path to serenity and community, we will continue to search for you and help you no matter your ailment. We carry our stories and messages to everyone who will listen. As the sun descends and the night becomes, we arise to take the path. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching on YouTube. We appreciate you all. If you want, just subscribe and come see us. Love you guys. Recording stopped.